You're listening to Psych with Mike. For more episodes or to connect with the show with comments, ideas, or to be a guest, go to www.psychwithmike.com. Follow the show on Twitter @PsychWithMike or like the Facebook page @PsychWithMike. Now, here's Psych with Mike.
Welcome into the Psych with Mike Library. This is Dr. Michael Mahan, and I am here today with Mr. Brett Newcomb and with intern Michael.
Good morning.
Good morning, young man.
How are you doing?
I'm all right.
So this is the Friday after the horrible shooting in Texas, in Uvalde, Texas, and I feel a certain weight on my chest. Do you guys feel that?
Do you feel a different weight because children are involved than you felt in Buffalo 10 days ago?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Interesting.
So I read every word that Stephen King wrote until I read Pet Sematary. And Pet Sematary obviously includes a child in it, and that was something that profoundly impacted me, and and included a child in a way that made the child kind of evil. And that was something that was really hard for me to process, and I didn't read any Stephen King after that. I have the same thing with Anne Rice and the way that she uses Claudia in Interview with a Vampire. There's just something different for me. There's something different about kids than adults.
And you would not want to read Orson Scott Card's book, Lost Boys.
No, I like Orson Scott Card, but I probably would not read that book.
Will make you cry your eyes out.
Yeah.
It's a tragic tale.
Yeah.
Even some of the Ender's Game series gets a little dicey in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, when you're recruiting the children specifically for that purpose, yeah. I mean, and you know that you're doing it. I mean, and it's intentional. I mean, and we're getting very esoteric now, but yes, I feel definitely that there's a difference between children and adults. Is that unique? Do you guys feel that way?
I don't know that I've thought it through. I would just have emotional reactions. I'm not sure how useful that is.
Yeah. But so maybe a part of why this is prescient for me is because after 9/11, you and I were working in a group practice at that time. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, you remember that?
Of course.
And the day that happened, the day that 9/11 happened, I was sitting on the parking lot of a retail computer store, because the person who ran that office had given me permission the day before that to actually network the office for the first time in the history of our office. And so I was there buying cable and routers and things like that to be able to create an internet network at our office for the first time that we had ever had it. And I don't even remember if you remember this, but I had ran cables down the walls and stuff like that.
Vaguely.
And Tiger Woods was in town for a PGA. The PGA was at Belle Reve in St. Louis here that day, that week, for the PGA Championship. Tiger Woods was supposed to be putting on an expose. He was at the height of his popularity. And I was sitting on the parking lot listening to the coverage of golf, and I heard about the planes flying into the Twin Trade Towers, and I was mortified. And I came to work that day, came to the office, and I had clients scheduled, and I said to you, I don't know if I can do this. And you said, well, if you can't do it, that's fine, but I would promote the idea to you that if you're having a hard time, then your clients are having a hard time. And so I stayed and I did therapy that day, and I was glad that I did. But in the aftermath of that, because we worked with a lot of school districts, I was tasked with putting together some kind of presentation about what the impact of this was on kids. Because if you remember, that day, everybody wheeled VCRs and whatever. I mean, I don't even remember what the technology was, but wheeled televisions into the classrooms, and they were showing this stuff, and the news coverage was putting this on a loop. And one of the things that came out of the research after that day was kids can't understand the difference between this happened once 35 minutes ago and it's the same plane over and over again. They were re-traumatized every time they saw the new events. And so this started a whole investigation into how's the difference between the way that kids process information and the way that parents process information. And as adults, and especially when we ourselves are having an emotional reaction, I don't think we always understand or appreciate the differences between the way that the children process that information. And so one of the things that's why for me it's different when we talk about kids than adults, because I did a lot of that research at that time and understand that that's different. And I just feel for any child right now. My son's a teacher in middle school, and so not as young as these kids. But I was talking to him yesterday, and I said, this has just got to be devastating. He said, I don't even know. He said, I don't know what to do. We're just doing emotional first aid.
Well, you still don't know what to do in the state of Missouri. Missouri is the fourth highest number of gun deaths per 100,000 state in the union. It's higher than Texas. 48% of people in Missouri own guns. But the state legislature has been pushing all this year that teachers are pedophiles, that we can't allow them to choose textbooks or curriculum, that they're all going to teach CRT, and we need to watch them like hawks. Now they're saying, let's give them guns.
I was just going to say, man, now they're going to say,
what the hell is wrong with them?
It's
it's
unbelievable.
Bullshit. I hate it.
Yeah.
And they all chase their own particular will-o'-the-wisp solution.
Right.
The argument, I don't know if there is an argument, the question about clinicians that comes to my mind when you say what you've just said is, in a crisis, if you're not calm, can you do therapy? Should you do therapy? If you can be calm, is it helpful to your client for you to do therapy? And I think you have to ask yourself those questions, and because you can't do the countertransference stuff of working out your own trauma in the room with the client.
Right.
And that's why we always recommend that clinicians have supervision and they have other people working that they can go to in a moment of crisis. I remember working with Linnell Sutherland when she found out that one of her clients had been killed. She interrupted a session of mine and pulled me out in the hall, and she said I need a hug, and she needed to cry, and then she needed to stabilize herself before she could go in with a client. And you have to do that. You can't bring your stuff to the table. It's a real challenge. But then as a human being, as a parent, you have to also try to absorb the sense of loss and ask the questions. How do we deal with children with questions? How do we deal with parents with questions? Well, how do we move forward? What do we do?
Right. And we then even broaden that beyond just if you're a clinician. Every teacher in every classroom in America right now is having to do that for themselves and their class.
Well, and teachers and kids at all level brackets are exposed to movies, video games, news, media, whatever. There's a story out this morning about an 11-year-old girl that survived the shooting. She laid on top of one of her friend's bodies and scooped up his blood and rubbed it all over and pretended to be dead. Now, at 11, she had that much self-awareness and other awareness to try to figure out how to survive.
Yeah.
But then today, when she's telling the story about it, she can't be interviewed by a man. So she started hyperventilating. She can talk to a woman. How do kids process? How do we help them process? And just your ordinary classroom teacher. I mean, I'm just a boy from Podunk, Arkansas, sitting in a classroom trying to teach social studies. What do I know about surviving trauma? What do I know about murderers? What do I know about machine gun assaults in the room? And how am I going to help those kids?
Right.
How do I do that?
Well, so the first thing is, how do kids process information? And one of the things that I think is predominantly important is that people understand kids process information differently than adults. And while hopefully most of us as adults, we have some ability to use the duck's there. I love the duck. We have the ability to use some form of abstraction, right? So we can understand that these events that happened in Texas, and that's thousands of miles away. Kids process information black and white. They are just concrete. Hence the name concrete development, right? Concrete operations. And so a kid sees something happen in a school that looks just like their school. They don't know that that school's 2,000 miles away from them. That could be next door. That could be in the classroom next door to them. So that trauma is much more real for them because the way that they're interpreting reality is different than the way that adults interpret reality. And one of the things that, as I said before, that they did in 9/11 was bring the TVs into the classrooms, and people were watching it because the adults wanted to know. They were afraid. They were trying to get answers, but they were leaving these things on a loop in front of the kids, and every time that plane hit a building, the kids thought it was another plane hitting another building. And so for them, instead of 2 planes or 3 planes hitting buildings, they saw 1,000 planes hit a building.
You know, we were pretty lucky. I was in the first grade in 9/11.
Well, there you go.
And they came across the intercom system and told teachers to turn off their televisions.
That's a good administrator.
It really was.
Yeah.
I was really very fortunate during that.
But you need that kind of leadership that knows what to do and steps in and does it. And then you need teachers that'll follow the directions.
Yes, and they did. They were really, really well done for the situation that it was. So I didn't see any footage until well after the day it happened. We kept... so we had migration of kids from classroom to classroom for different classes. So you would go to one classroom for reading,
first grade?
one for math.
Wow.
Yeah. I went to a Feichen school, or I'm sorry, not an Edison school. It's a system of like magnet schools that does similar things, like Montessori, but magnet and free. So they said everybody remains in the classroom that they're in right now. Nobody leaves their current classroom. Teachers will swap classrooms instead of students swapping classrooms. And my mom was a teacher in the building at the time. She was a teacher's assistant for a kindergarten class. And she said...
I'm smiling because teachers really resist that. They nest in those classrooms and they want to send the kids out. But I got my stuff here, my coffee cup, my picture of my kid. Yeah. So they really
they did
are
a
challenged.
Good job.
Yeah.
It was a challenge, but I think they did a good job with it. And what I remember from that day is my dad was military, so he was on base. They're DEFCON 1, right? They're on full lockdown.
Yeah.
Phone calls aren't coming in or going out. No information whatsoever. My teacher asked if I would like to call my mom because she was downstairs. And so we had a brief conversation, and Mom said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yes." That's all. That was it. That was the whole conversation. And so I heard nothing more about what happened, what was going on until the next day. Dad didn't come home that night, right? So he was stuck on base for I think it was 48 hours. And so I do think that, you know, my generation was the last bastion of having tornado and fire drills. We never had school shooter drills. We were given information about what to do in the event of an active shooter. This was obviously post
Columbine,
post Colorado, post Kent State University. However, we never had to do the drills, and now kids do the drills, and I wonder about what that is like, because 9/11 is something that's very far away in an office building, and you are inherently removed from it. Whereas an education space, to me, you were talking about children are sacred. To me, education spaces are sacred, and that really strikes me every time that happens.
So let's go to our break, and when we come back, we'll talk about specifically what do kids need to hear from us as adults to make them feel better. Hey, Brett, if you were going to tell somebody to check out something on the internet to help them with their mental health, what would you tell them?
I tell them, listen to Psych with Mike.
Why would you tell them that?
Because it's probably one of the most easily listenable experiences you can have that will give you information that's useful for a whole spectrum of concerns that people have.
I agree, and I have actually been told that by at least a dozen people, several of whom were not married to me, and some of them didn't even know me.
That's amazing.
That is amazing. It's when we get that kind of feedback from people, it is so incredibly humbling and overwhelming for me.
It is for both of us.
Yeah. So we really appreciate it, and as always, if it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike. Okay, we're back, and the research all shows that what we need to do as adults and caregivers to help children in a situation like this is to make sure that the children know they are safe and that the people that are taking care of them are safe. So mom and dad are safe, the teachers are safe. And so that's the thing that we need to be able to help them to feel comfortable with. So you don't have to be able to explain why there are bad people in the world. You don't have to be able to go through why there are good or bad gun laws. All you have to be able to do is to provide a structural foundation for that child that lets them know that you're safe, that they're safe, and that you're going to do everything to make sure that they are able to continue to be safe. You look like you're in...
I just don't know how you do that. And depending on the age of the child, first grader versus a fifth grader versus a ninth grader, they're going to have different levels of awareness and information sources. Most of these kids now have cell phones.
Right.
That at least offer the opportunity for news flashes and notifications to come up. And how do you tell them you're going to be safe? We don't know that. Mm-hmm. I don't know that you're going to be safe. What I can tell you is we're going to do everything possible to keep you safe. Mm-hmm. But life is full of unknowns.
Right.
And so there are things that we can try to do to train and prepare, like we try to teach you drown proofing in case you fall in the pool, how you can help yourself until somebody can get to you. We have active shooter drills. We have fire drills. We have all kinds of drills, hurricane drills. What do you do in the circumstances to make yourself as safe as you can? We try to have leaders in place who have exposure to these drills and trainings who themselves can stay calm, because it's not helping my classroom of 30 second graders if I'm having a panic attack because I'm frozen and don't know what to do. And what I do or what I know to do may not be helpful, may not be the solution, but I have to go through it and help them.
So let me ask you a question. Because we are old, you and I are old.
Yeah.
And certainly we're older than intern Michael. So intern Michael's never done a nuclear bomb drill.
I have.
But you and I have.
Yeah.
And so
Which at the time I knew better than. I knew that if I got under my desk and hugged my knees,
that it wasn't going to make any difference.
A nuclear bomb going off.
Right.
That desk is not a little Formica half inch of material. Not going to help me at all. And I also knew that I was 20 miles from my home, and the school bus wasn't going to run if the nuclear bomb went off. So how am I going to get home? How's somebody going to get to me?
So my question is, did you find that to be
ludicrous?
You found it to be ludicrous
as a child.
Okay. Even as a child, you did not. It did not give you any sense of security.
It didn't make me feel any better about the adults. They don't know what the hell they're talking about.
Because my experience was exactly the opposite. My experience...
You're more of a sucker than I am.
I am more of a sucker than you are. Yeah. And I didn't understand the dynamics of what a nuclear bomb was or what that was going to mean.
I also probably was a little better informed than the average person of my age group.
Let's just face it, you're smarter than the average bear.
I am.
But I found that to be comforting. Like, I thought, okay, these people have my back. They know what they're doing. And so we're going to get under these tables. And so if something happens, I feel...
And I am going to offend you, but I
Okay.
would say that a lot of people who hang on to religion use it for the same reason,
Uh-huh.
and that they don't have any better information than I have, or any better predictability of the outcomes. So when Republican politicians send thoughts and prayers, it doesn't solve the gun problems shooting up schools.
Well, clearly that's true. I mean, yes, thoughts and prayers. We got to get beyond that.
Well,
I mean,
where do we go?
Well, and I'll kind of push back. I think those are different. I think those are different situations. One is one where you do not have control, right? If we're talking about nuclear bombs, nuclear proliferation, there is some degree of control at a high policy level.
Yeah.
But as an individual, as a child getting under
Yeah.
a desk, if that brings you comfort, what is the...
So does sucking your thumb.
Yeah, what is the problem in the comfort? Outside of...
Well, I don't know if there's a problem in...
long-term- Right, long-term resistance to policy change, right? If people are comforted, they won't take action, right? If they're not comfortable, if they are
Well-
uncomfortable, they might take action.
So to me, the definition there has to do with the immediacy of the moment. If I can comfort myself enough to quiet my anxieties, then I can brace myself for the next wave, whatever that is.
Right.
So I don't know that it impacts the longer term solution to the outcome. And I do agree with you. If there's an immediate way to calm down someone in hysterics and help them stabilize, then you can help look for a path forward, even if you don't see one. You can at least be calm enough to look. And if you're in the middle of a hyperventilating panic attack, you can't do that either. And as an adult, I have that responsibility. I take that responsibility. I embrace that responsibility, even if I don't know what to do with it. But when I go in that classroom, just like police officer training has changed since Columbine. And they used to say, gather and wait, negotiate, call for resources. Now they say, you got to go in. You got to go in. So now the cops don't go in. They didn't go in Texas yesterday. And the police officer in charge said they could have gotten shot. They could have gotten killed. That's why they didn't go in.
Kids could have
And
gotten shot and killed.
Kids were shot and killed. My response is, if I take that job, and I take the training for that job, and I swear the oath, what I am saying is, given that situation, I'll go towards the sound of the guns. And I expect them to do it. They took the job, they take the pay, they get the retirement, they take the risk, and I love them for it, and God bless them, and we need them. But if you own up and put on the uniform, get your ass in there.
So going back, though, to my analogy of the bomb drills, that didn't help you. It helped me.
No.
And so when I'm saying that we need to find ways of being
Oh, it
able
got me in
to
trouble because I wouldn't take it seriously.
make the children
This is
feel
stupid.
safe. Right.
Yeah.
That was beneficial for me. So that worked for me. What would have
But
worked?
that's just how smart I wasn't, because I smarted off and got in trouble when
Yeah.
I could have figured that was going to be happening.
Well, but is there anything in that situation that you look back on now that you think would have been beneficial for you?
I don't know.
Yeah, because you rightly point out, kids are different. Every kid is going to need something different to make them feel okay. The bomb drills actually helped me. They made me feel more safe, and so that was a good intervention for me. It wasn't a good intervention for you. So
Did you teach your children that Santa Claus was a lie?
I don't know what you're talking about, because I still think Santa Claus is an actual man who lives at the North Pole.
Okay.
But no, I did not teach them that.
Yeah.
Not until they came up with it on their own.
It's a question parents have to answer.
Yeah.
Do you buy into this myth because it's comforting and it's pretty and it makes a nice holiday picture, or do you indulge your children's fantasies because it makes their childhood happier? Yeah, everybody has to have their own answer. Now, I have my answer, but as a clinician, I don't impose my answer on my client.
Right.
I listen to the client and seek ways to help them define their own answer.
Right. But you
So,
don't you don't know of anything that would have spoken to that child that you were.
No.
So if I had come to you as an adult, if I had come to you and said, "Hey, little Brett, this is about,"
I didn't trust adults. I lived in a hypervigilant world.
so
of
maybe
danger,
that's the issue.
Day in and day out. Yeah.
But maybe that's the issue, is that you didn't trust adults.
No.
And so you didn't see adults as an arbiter of things that would create safety for you.
No.
And so maybe that was really the issue. If there would have been some other way, not through the avenue of an adult, but then how many kids in our country don't trust adults?
Great question.
Probably a large, and so if the adults are the ones who are saying, "Oh, here, let's make these children feel safer," maybe that isn't going to work for those children because they don't trust adults, and maybe they shouldn't trust adults.
But again, the conversation is partly difficult because you're talking about a huge conglomerate.
Yeah.
You have to break it down into brackets. Kids from 1 to 6, kids
Sure.
from 6 to 10. You know, their exposure, their life, their realities are all different.
Right.
Their capacities are all different.
But so what I would say to that is, you use language that is appropriate for the age group.
Yes.
So I would speak differently to
Yes.
a 6-year-old than I would speak to a 12-year-old.
I would hope so.
But the goal would be to make them feel safe and secure.
That would be the goal if you can find a way to do it.
Yeah.
But also,
How do you do it?
yeah.
I think a lot of the research that I had read in like developmental psych classes dealt with building resilience and finding different ways to
Yeah.
build resilience. Right? Dr. Kenneth Ginsburg is the kind of the author in pop psych, or I guess also clinical psych, that comes to mind. And he talks about these 7 C's of resilience: competence, confidence, connection, character, contribution, coping, and control. And he says if you can build those things, that if you want to look at the long-term success of a child, either economically or emotionally, resilience is that key. And so I wonder if it's less about convincing children that they're safe, right? Because I agree, right?
Yeah.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you have to understand that you are safe. It's less about convincing children they will always be safe, and more about giving them the tools to be competent enough to find their way to safety at all times, right? To always know that they can rely
Right.
on themselves. This is kind of what
And
my dad
so-
says, is you can't take education away from somebody.
Yeah. So I would then respond to that. I mean, because I absolutely agree with what you're saying. It makes perfect sense. However, my opinion is that over the last 15 years, we've done a major disservice to our kids by teaching that every child always wins and we don't discriminate. A, B, C, D, you know, we all get A's, we all get ribbons, everybody wins, nobody comes in second place. Reality is reality. We have to teach our kids about reality, and we have to give them competence to navigate the real world.
Yeah.
So in the real world, there may be a shooter. If there is one, here are the things that we can try to do to be safe. These are the things we'll try to do with and for you to make you safe.
Yeah.
Well, but going along that line, so I think that what you say, Michael, is 100% correct. That trying to increase resilience in those kids is the answer. When I say make them feel safe, I think that's an
Resilience
analogy.
and competency, which is the
Yeah.
purpose of the drills.
Right.
The shooter drills or the fire drills. You are competent to lead your desk row out of the building. You know which way to turn when you go out the door.
also
You know where to go.
confidence to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah, all those overlap. They're all woven together in a fabric that helps the child grow and survive.
I think
So
that comes from ultimately the relationships that the child has with the adults and
Yes.
the other children around them. It's that connection that it is very relational, and that is how you build that safety net. That is how you help the psychology of a child and the mental health of a child to work through these really, really big issues.
So if there had been a designated child to lead the classroom, and the school had gotten together and said, "Oh, little Brett seems like that he's pretty good at that. He's got some, stuff going on," and so you had been designated as the group leader for your row or whatever to get under the desk and model that. Would that have been beneficial for you? Would that have helped you to feel more confident and confident?
I can't speculate. I have no idea.
Yeah, I wonder if that would have been, because now that you're saying that, I mean, that actually
That
makes
goes
a lot
back
of sense.
to the whole philosophy about, as a classroom teacher, take the bully and draft them into
Yeah.
authority
Yeah.
and give them responsibility so that they're not bullying, but they're taken care of.
Yeah.
So it's a strategy. Would that have worked for me? I mean, it's the equivalent of being a bully if I'm standing in the corner snarking and going, "You guys are suckers." Maybe.
Call that
Well, but I don't know. But
Yeah.
would you have taken it more seriously? Like if you had had that authority?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It didn't happen. But
Yeah.
would it? I don't know.
But it's the contribution piece.
Right,
Yeah.
and exactly, and so I'll include an article about that with the show notes. But I think that really is probably what we need to try and focus on is exactly that resilience piece. And when I say make them feel safe, that's exactly what I would think of.
However,
Yeah,
as a grown-up teacher who spent 20 plus
Yeah.
years in
You're
classrooms of 100
Yeah.
other teachers, I'm also aware of imbalances in capacity among the teachers.
yeah.
So what if they can't do it?
Well, I mean,
Which is the question that comes up when, I think I saw in the paper this morning, 32 school districts in Missouri have authorized teachers to carry guns.
yeah.
I don't want a second grade teacher taking a gun.
Mm-hmm.
What does she do with her gun when little Billy throws up and she has to clean it up?
Mm-hmm.
What does she do with the gun when two kids get into a fist fight and she has to go break them up?
Right.
What does she do with the gun when she squats down to teach somebody reading and somebody pats her butt?
Mm-hmm.
Or some kid sitting there goes, "Oh, I want to see your gun." Mm-hmm. And is she trained to shoot it? Does she know what to shoot at and how and when?
Right. I mean, and because if she's going to be carrying the gun, she's going to be carrying it on her. It's going to be unsecured. It's
Yeah, you
gonna
don't
be
leave it in your
unlocked.
desk drawer.
Right. If it's locked in your
what
desk
good is
drawer,
that?
right.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
that's what they're going to say.
But those questions
Yeah.
haven't been answered. The solution is, well, arm the teachers.
Yeah.
Harden the schools. This school in Uvalde, they spent $650,000 hardening the school. Somebody left the back door unlocked.
Right.
Which always happens.
Always happens.
Well,
mean,
I think that comes back to a very juvenile solution to the real question of neglect here, right? We're saying that we are neglecting our children systematically, and instead of changing the system, we're going to go with the solution of theoretical
An overlay.
resistance.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so the real solution there is you said there are differences in the capacity of teachers, right? There are
Yes.
differences in the aptitudes of students. And so what we do is we don't build better teachers, we build better systems for those teachers to exist in.
that would be the
Ideally.
goal. So hopefully that is helpful. It at least was helpful for us to kind of work through this ourselves. We are just human beings living in the world the same as everybody else, and we have feelings about when things like this happen. It's traumatic for us the same as it is for
And we don't have
everyone
answers
else.
either.
No, I mean, we're just trying to do the best that we can, and that's all anybody can do. The music that appears in Psych with Mike is written and performed by Mr. Benjamin DeClue. We definitely invite everybody to go to Apple Podcasts, find Psych with Mike, and leave us a rating and a comment. You can go on YouTube, search Psych with Mike, find us there, and definitely subscribe to the show. That would be the one biggest, best thing that people could do to really help us out. And as always, if it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike.